If you hear a laugh that belongs to no living thing, do not follow it. That laugh taught me how close I was to losing myself. My name is Jonah, and until last winter, I believed fear had polite boundaries. Creaky floorboards, storm-pressed windows, an old house that smelled of rain and mothballs. The place in the photograph, if you imagine that grin pressed into shadow, you are already halfway inside what I lived. It began with a job posting on a faded bulletin. Temporary archivist, night shifts, old asylum wings being cataloged. I needed the money and liked the quiet. I told myself quiet would be medicine. I was wrong. The quiet was a patient thing, and it was listening. The building swallowed light. On my first night, I walked corridors that had not forgiven time. Paint flayed from the plaster like old skin, iron radiators sighing cold steam, and the antiseptic tang of bleach that never fully left the air. My footsteps sounded thick, padded, too loud in a place that preferred whispers. I set up in room 19, under buzzing fluorescence that hummed the same two notes over and over until the sound stopped being sound and became a pressure behind the teeth. The staff had warned me about drafts, and drafts had names here. The third wing likes to remember, the head archivist said before he left me the keys. For a week, I cataloged files by the sick light of a desk lamp. Files smelled of paper rot and old sweat. I learned the way the building breathed at 3 in the morning, the long intake, the hesitant exhale. The first oddity was small, a pencil misplaced, its eraser blunt as if someone had been chewing on decisions in the dark. Then came the noises that no draft could make, a slow, wet smacking from the far wing, like someone trying to learn how to smile. I told myself patience had left objects behind. Mice could make terrible sounds. I told myself lies in the same cadence the place used to lull newcomers. One night, while copying an interview transcript, I noticed the margin of the page darken, as though ink had decided to bleed towards a secret. I held the paper to the lamp, and a cold wind, impossible in a sealed room, skimmed the back of my neck. The lamp flared, and in the flaring, for a fraction shorter than thought, I saw a face framed by blackness, a forehead too smooth, eyes round and bright as coins, and a mouth pulled across cheeks in too many teeth, like the photograph, but closer, as if photographed by my own fear. I blinked, and the face was gone. My mouth tasted of metal. Somewhere down the hall, a laugh answered my own pulse. It got worse when the building started to keep things for itself. At first, it was small thefts of trust. My watch found under a stack of intake forms, a page of my notes folded with surgical precision, my jacket draped over the back of the chair, though I was certain I had hung it in the closet. Every recovery felt like a concession, an admission that the asylum had reached into my day and rearranged it while I wasn't looking. Then my phone began to betray me. Batteries drained in minutes. Files of audio I had recorded at 1 in the morning played back with an extra layer beneath my voice. A second, slower voice that breathed like someone smiling through a throatful of cotton. When I sped the recording up to catch the rhythm, the slow voice fell into punctuation marks, and at the end of one sentence sounded uncannily like my own laugh, only wrong, as if laughter were a language I had forgotten. Memory blurred next. I would step out for fresh air and return to find my desk cleared, documents shuffled into a neat, impossible order. There were margins full of handwriting I recognized, my loops, my slanted T's, but the content was not my notes. It read, "Remember to smile." It read, "Noseless looks best." If I tore the pages apart, they muffled beneath my hands like cloth. If I burned a sheet, the ash smelled like teeth. People who had been kind at first left in stages. The archivist who handed me the keys stopped answering emails. A janitor caught my eye in broad daylight and then blinked twice too many and walked away. The head nurse, old, world-weary, told me once, over coffee that tasted like hospital broth, that some wings didn't store objects, they stored identities. "They make faces out of the faces that come through," she said, and for the first time, she didn't meet my eyes. Her cup trembled in the interlude between words. I started to see the grin everywhere, not just in the margins or in the reflection of darkened windows, but in the way shadows pooled behind the curtains, in the way my own reflection stuck when the lamp went out. I would catch a motion in the periphery and turn to find nothing. only to have the nothing answer by rearranging the room into a photograph of itself. A scream recorded on my phone sounded like it came from 2 rooms down, but when I ran toward it, the corridor led to a dead end I had never seen. The walls there were smooth and bone white, and upon them someone had drawn, with fingernails, a mouth too wide. The first true betrayal was the file with my name on it. It was misfiled, tucked between patient charts from 1947. A brittle sheet listed a Jonah Mercer, my name, no middle initial, my date of birth misspelled by a single digit. The diagnosis column read, smiling delirium. Notes below were sparse and clinical. Subject reports mirror shows another patient. Subject insists on practicing expression. Subject resists removal. The last entry was dated 30 years ago. For a long time, I gripped the edge of the desk and counted the small tiles of the floor until my fingers bled numbness into rhythm. Then, from the darkness beyond the doorway, something studied the sound of my breathing and smiled as if it understood teeth could be a language too. When the walls began to stop pretending they were walls, I understood there was no map left to follow. The corridors folded like paper, right angles becoming suggestions. Doors opened into rooms I had not passed moments before, and then opened again into the same room with a photograph on the table that hadn't been there a breath earlier. Each photograph was the asylum's idea of a portrait. Faces stretched in a grin, each mouth a serrated horizon of teeth, each pair of eyes catching light like trapped moths. Some faces had noses, some did not. The ones without noses, those were the closest to smiling forever. A sticky sweetness sat in the air, like the smell after a rain of sugar and rust. My throat tasted it, and the taste was dread. I stopped trying to reason. Logic collapsed the way a brittle tooth collapses under pressure. I learned instead to follow the sound that had first taught me to listen, the laugh that did not belong to anything alive. It would appear through the pipes as a low, wet chuckle, and then up close as a breath against the back of my neck. Once, when I chased it down a stairwell, my hands met only air, and when I turned, the stairwell had closed behind me like the book of a mouth shutting. The photographs multiplied. Each one had a date scrawled in a hand that sometimes matched mine. There was a photograph of me at the desk, eyes hollow as holes punched through paper. There was another where I stood by the lamp, and the light caught the whites of my teeth so harshly they looked like keys. Someone had propped mirrors against the wall opposite the pictures. The mirrors showed me wearing someone else's face, cheekbones placed too high, a forehead smoothed by violence, a mouth that did not belong to me, but that I felt being tugged into place. I found the room with the files, an archive within an archive. Shelves crawled toward the ceiling, each box labeled with names that chimed with the thing's appetite. I pulled a box marked with my own name and the same misspelled birth date. Inside, a stack of photographs, each newer than the last. Finishing with one so recent, the edges still held the warmth of breath. I lifted it, and the warmth was the exact shape of a smile. You can bargain with a building only if you know what it wants. I tried to bargain, offered to leave, to destroy the records, to smile for it on command, in the hope that mimicry would satisfy whatever hunger was there. None of it worked. The thing did not want paper or promise. It wanted a template. It wanted a model to wear in the light. And you do not argue with the thing that rearranges faces. You only offer yours. When it finally came for me, it did not run. It approached like someone sliding into a photograph. Precise, inevitable. I felt its breath by my ear, and for the last time tried to name myself. Names slipped into the room like coins into a fountain and sank without sound. Fingers, warm and sure, found the shape of my cheeks, checked the angle of my jaw, smoothed the line of my nose until I felt my face loosen like a mask. It smiled, and the smile fit me better than anything I had ever worn. It's wearing my face.
Subscribe to Horror Story Bar.